find out how I do this. Boop, boop, boop. Here. Okay. Just a second. I need to put this up.
You should be able to just share the
Here
screen
we
and pick
go.
up your screen. Great.
Can you see anything now or share? This one.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay, play from start. There, perfect. You all see it?
Perfect.
Okay, so a little bit about producing omega-3 supplements. So first of all, fish oil has to be refined in order to take out contaminants like mercury. This is one of the big problems about eating fish actually as a source of omega-3 today, natural fish. I always encourage that, but on the other hand, in order to get enough in the modern world, we have another problem with pollution of the oceans, and this actually accumulates in the fish, especially the fatty fish, which are the ones that are rich in the omega-3s. So second of all, the refining process leaves the omega-3 molecules vulnerable to oxidation and to rancidity. This is a big problem, that when we take out mercury and other contaminants, we actually also take out some of the things that protects the omega-3 molecules, because these ones, they have a natural protection from omega-9 and from polyphenols when they are inside the fish. But when we are refining it in order to take away contaminants, we also take away the omega-9s, and we also take away the polyphenols. And those are the ones that are naturally protecting the omega-3s when they are inside the animal. And they come from, actually from algae, they moved in the food chain. And in land animals, they come from grass. Now, naturally, a lot of the land animals that we eat today, they are not fed with grass. And this is one of the reasons they do not contain so much omega-3. But if everything was how it was supposed to be, they would contain protected omega-3 fatty acids. The standard procedure for fish oil supplements, for many of those, we can say our competitors in the market, they add vitamin E as a protection. So they try to protect these vulnerable omega-3s by adding vitamin C as an antioxidant. The problem is that after the vitamin E enters the body, when we get a capsule inside of our body and it gets broken down in the stomach, the vitamin E loses its protection of the omega-3s. So it actually doesn't work so well anymore. And as our bodies need approximately 36 hours to actually absorb the omega-3s, some of them are going rancid inside our body. And when they are rancid, the body doesn't really want them. So they're just excluded again. And basically, people are just getting nothing for their money. Depending on the quality of the product, the freshness of the product, this can be anything from 80% absorption down to 10 or 20%. So this is really something that surprises a lot of people when I tell them about it, because of course they believe that what they are buying is a good product, but they're not aware of this. Because as long as the oil is inside the capsule, the vitamin E protects it. But when it comes inside the body, that function stops. And that is why I would claim that the balanced oil is the next level omega-3 supplement. This is really a special formula that makes sure that these very fragile omega-3s are highly protected and that we get 100% absorption. So first of all, the balanced oil is based on small fish like anchovies and sardines, and they are sourced from all over the world. And that's actually one major reason why we are sourcing them from different places on the planet, depending on the season. And that's because the sourcing is based on the correct relationship between EPA and DHA. And this actually varies from season to season in the fish around the different oceans in the world. So in order to make sure that we always have a relationship of 2 EPAs to 1 DHA, we source the oil depending on this, but always on the small fish. After refinement, the omega-3 fatty acids are brought back to the natural protection state by addition of olive oil rich in polyphenols. So this is really one of the great clues, that we take a very good omega-3 oil that has been refined with the right relationship between EPA and DHA. And then we bring it back to the stage it was at before the refinement, but without the mercury and the other contaminants. The special thing about olive oil is that, and especially this one that we use, which has been made by highly, very early harvested olives. So they're extremely rich in polyphenols. And they're also rich in omega-9. So in a way, this olive oil replicates when it's added to the omega-3 fatty acids, how the fish oil will look inside the fish. And this is why Paul Clayton, he often says that balance oil is more like oily fish than it's actually like an omega-3 supplement. And the way it's formed in the fish, the way it's packed and protected, that's really the version, the standard that the body likes the most. So you can see that, again, the formula replicates a naturally occurring omega-3 oil or fish oil, but without the toxins. This is really genius way of making an omega-3 supplement. And this is what makes this balance oil so special. It's easy recognizable to the body and it's highly absorbable. So again, people are not losing their money. They get 100% what they pay for. Nothing gets wasted. And that's why we have such a stunning product that is so good at bringing people back to balance. Very, very extraordinary, in my belief. Okay, so let's move to the balance test. So the balance test is a tool to confirm that customers actually need what we recommend them to buy. There are so many health products on the market. There's so many supplements of all kinds, and people can, you know, they can really buy and spend so much money on this. And most of the products, well, they're not really able to tell if they can make a difference or if you actually need it. But with the balance test, we can ensure people by testing them first that they actually do need the omega-3 supplements. So this makes us very credible, and this is a very, very good tool for us to use as salespersons. It's based on solid science. So this is something that I also really like about our products, is that the omega-3 science and all the knowledge about omega-3 is more than 50 years old. So there's been so many studies done on omega-3, and we actually know how much omega-3 people should have in their body in order to have optimal health. It's analyzed in an independent lab in Norway, and this also makes it very strong. It has nothing to do with Zinzino. It's an independent lab that makes the analyze, because they have very good equipment for this. It can also be used for checking performance of the product that the customer's already taking. So I often hear people saying, well, I actually already take an omega-3. And I ask them, well, would you like to know if you actually get what you pay for, if this product works, and if the dosage is correct? Because there's a big variation between daily dosage when I look at different products. Like some of them are down to 88 milligrams a day, some of them up to 3,000 milligrams per day. So they're not really a consensus about this. The only way we can actually check if people get sufficient is by testing them. So this is also another way to enter a new customer who is saying, well, I actually take something. Well, would you like to see if it works? Because they are spending money on it already. And often when they find out that the performance of the product they're taking already is not really good, they are ready to shift to another product. It can be used to track the customer's improvements and fine-tune doses to the individual. And this is also amazing, because we see that people, they don't require the same dosage. If you're diagnosed with an illness, or if you're very sports active, you usually need more. And it also depends on body size. And there can be different things that would direct people into different dosages, depending on what they actually want to achieve. So with this test, testing them before they start the oil, testing them after 4 to 6 months, and maybe testing them once a year afterwards in order to make sure that they stay in the safe zone. This is something that also gives us a great credibility, and that makes the customers feel safe. The test reflects approximately the last 4 months of diet. So that also means when you hear from some of your customers saying, oh, I had a burger yesterday, will that affect my result? You can say, no, it will not affect your result because this is based on the last 4 months. And that's because the test is measuring on the red blood cells, and the exchange rate of the red blood cells is approximately 120 days. So that's what it takes to change all the red blood cells, and that's why we say the last 4 months of diet. Okay, so now we'll move into something that I know a lot of you is very interested in, and that is how do we actually analyze the test? What do the tests tell us? And I've brought in some different tests that I have done myself in order to explain it a little better. And this is the first one. This is a boy, 5 years old. And of course, when you look at the test, you say, okay, this is quite bad because all of the numbers are red. And we should really see the indicators, which is the top of the sheet, as a kind of a traffic light. So green is safe, yellow is in between. I mean, it's not too bad, but it could get better. And red is really the danger zone. That's not where you want to be. So the first place I like to look is at the omega-3 level, which is the second one from the top. So let's just leave the your protection a little bit, and let's start at the omega-3 level. So the omega-3 level is a combination of EPA and DHA in the body. And when it says above 8%, it means that more than 8% of the fat in your body should be omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA. And if we look at the next slide here, we see that the figures with the blue ring around they are actually the ones that make out the omega-3 level. So we look at your value. You see this one called your value. This is the actual measurement that we've done in your body. The target value is where you should be in percentage. When we look at 100%, all the fatty acids in your body, how many percent should each of them be at? And we can see the optimal rate for omega-3 EPA, which is third from the bottom, is 4.1. And for this particular boy, he only has 0.3% of his fat is actually EPA. So that gives him quite a big deviation, and it means that he really, really is in urgent need for EPA. And the same goes for DHA, which is a bottom figure, which is only 1.6 and is supposed to be 4.9. So these values are so extremely important. And now we're talking about a little boy, so he's actually growing. So he should really, really have some more of this, because this will affect a lot also his, in terms of learning capabilities and a lot of different things for his brain development, eyesight development, and so on. So we see that 0.3 plus 1.6 will be 1.9, and that's how we find the omega-3 level. It's very important that this omega-3 level goes up to 8% or more, and this is one of the key figures I always look at, because it's very important for the rest of the figures. Below the omega-3 level, we have the omega-6, omega-3 balance. And this is also a figure that we look a lot into. And we kind of target that we want to be in a range of 3-to-1 balance and not above that. And we could also be a little bit below, that would also be okay, but around 3-to-1, 2-to-1, like that. And this is the balance between omega-6, which is the inflammatory omega-6 in the body, and the anti-inflammatory omega-3 in the body, which is EPA. So we need to remember that EPA is the most anti-inflammatory omega-3, and that's also why it's so important to rebuild that. Because what actually often happens in the body, so let's just return to this one. We often see that the DHA is higher than the EPA, and that is because DHA is used a lot by the brain. And the brain makes sure that it gets what it needs. And the body can actually quite easily convert the EPA into DHA. So it means that if the brain requires DHA, the body will make sure of that conversion, which is quite simple for the body to do. The problem is that if we don't have it sufficient in total, we always lack a lot of EPA. So we lack that anti-inflammatory molecule EPAs. And that is why for this particular boy, we have a balance 25.2 to 1. So he's highly inflamed at this point. So this is really not very good news. Basically, in order to improve this, we can do two things. We can either put more omega-3 on the body, or we could lower the amount of omega-6. Those are the two options we have. But if we look at this boy's figures, and we look at the arachidonic acid, which is the fourth from the bottom, which is the omega-6 with the anti-inflammatory properties, we can see that he actually also lacks a little bit of omega-6 of this arachidonic acid. So this means that for him, it's not a good idea to turn down arachidonic acid. The more important is to give him more omega-3. This is really important for him. Actually, he should get a little bit more arachidonic acid, but I will return to that in a second. Okay, so let's go to the next one. This is arachidonic acid formation efficiency. So this really tells us how good is the enzyme system of the body, or the enzymes of the body, to convert the linoleic acid, which is the top red ring, into arachidonic acid, which is the lower highlighted with the red ring. So the linoleic acid can actually be transformed in the body into arachidonic acid. But the conversion rate is highly individual. And normally the human body systems are not very effective in this. And this boy is a very good example. He's actually very high in linoleic acid, but it doesn't seem like his body is capable of transforming it into arachidonic acid. And that is why, in this case, we would recommend this boy to take in more animal-derived foods. And that is because the linoleic acid is the plant omega-6. So this comes from many of the cheap plant oils that I'm always very suspectable of. So that's like corn oil, grapeseed oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, all these very cheap, highly refined oils. They're rich in it, and they are everywhere in our food chain, unfortunately. So the arachidonic acid can also come from our food, but not from the plant world. It comes from the animal world. So it comes from eggs, pork meat, chicken. It can even come from farmed salmon. And for this particular boy, it would be much better for him to replace some of that plant-derived omega-6 with a little more animal-based food, which would contain the finished omega-6 arachidonic acid. So it's preformed already in the animal. So when it comes into his body doesn't need to transform it even further. It's ready packed and made. So this is a good example of a person with a low arachidonic acid formation efficiency rate. Means that his body is not very good at transforming plant omega-6 into the animal form. Okay, so let's continue to the cell membrane fluidity index. This is also highly interesting. And this is an indicator of how flexible the membranes of every cell in the body is. And why is that interesting? It really makes a difference for every cell. And we need to remember that our whole body is made out of cells. And how the cell membrane functions, that affects how the cells can take up energy and how they can exclude waste. So if the cell membrane is too stiff, too rigid, and not flexible enough, it really doesn't work well. And that means compromises the cell metabolism. What makes cell membrane hard and stiff? That's actually saturated fatty acids. And the saturated, we see here in this, for this particular boy, the two top one, you can say type of fat, saturated, the palmitic acid and the stearic acid, those are both saturated. So it's a little bit like butter in the fridge. It's very hard. And if you imagine that being your cell membrane, that's not what you actually want. You want to have a flexible, soft cell membrane. So what makes the cell membranes flexible and soft? Well, again, our wonder molecules, the omega-3s, because they're very big, flexible liquid molecules. So when they are packed into the cell membranes, and that's only possible if they're available from the food, because the body cannot produce them itself, then you get every new cell that the body creates will be of a much better version than the previous one when we start to supplement with omega-3. So for this boy, giving him omega-3 will make sure that when his body is actually exchanging itself, because the body renews the cells all the time, those new cells will be a better version than the old one, with more flexible cell membranes, and it will affect his metabolism and his whole well-being, actually, his energy level and so on. And again, we can see here that he actually is a little low in saturated fatty acids, so he's not supposed to cut on those. He's just supposed to add more omega-3. So again, you can see with this presentation that it's a little important to look at the values below also, in order to find out what should we do. Should we cut at one place and add something, or should we only add something? Okay, let's take the last one. So this is mental strength index. And this is relationship between arachidonic acid, so our inflammatory omega-6, and the total of omega-3s in terms of EPA and DHA. And why is this important, the relationship between those two? That's because if you have too much omega-6 in your brain and too little omega-3, it actually affects your mood. It can increase the risk of depression, anxiety and different mental states that are not really associated with happiness and balance and joy. So this is also something that we want to make sure not too much inflammation in the brain. Let us look into one more test. This is a female, 70 years old. We can see that she is actually in balance. So she has a balance of 2.6 to 1. And this, I have brought in this test to show you that it's not always enough to look just at the balance. Because if we look at the omega-3 level, she's only at 4.3 and not above 8. So this tells us that she doesn't only lack omega-3, she actually also lacks omega-6. And that is confirmed here. We see arachidonic acid with the round circle. She lacks quite a lot of omega-6 as well, and she also lacks omega-3. So my recommendation for this lady is to bring in more omega-3, but also to bring in more animal preformed arachidonic acid. So more eggs, more chicken, more pork, more meat in general, or animal-derived food. And we can also see at this lady that her linoleic acid, so that's her omega-6 derived from plant food, it's actually a little bit on the higher side. It's 21.2, but still her body is not able to transform it into arachidonic acid. So more animal food on the plate for this lady. Also, I would like to emphasize on the top figure. So we have palmatic acid, a saturated fatty acid, which is also available from animal food. One thing about the palmatic acid is that if it's too high, it's rarely food derived in a way that we would believe, like taking too much animal fat. It's actually a reaction from the body that it gets too many carbs, too much carbohydrates compared to what the body actually can process. And when there's too much carbs coming in and the muscles are not taking up enough, the liver transforms them into palmatic acid, which is a fatty acid that has a tendency to store around the organs. And that's not something that we want. So if this value is very high, not just a little bit high, but very high, maybe plus, I would say a deviation of more than 2, then we can recommend our customer to look a little bit into the carbs. Maybe cut down a little bit on the carbs and replace them with more vegetables, more animal food, depending on the other values. So this was something I also did for this lady. I said, you have to cut a little bit on the carbs, exchange those carbs with some more animal food. because actually this is a biomarker for a diabetes type 2. So this is something that this lady doesn't have a diabetes type 2 at the moment, but it's a biomarker thing that it's the direction we go towards. So let's see what happened after. I think she did her second test after approximately 8 months, taking the balance oil, taking the extent. And this is so impressive what she actually achieved, because she really moved her omega level from around 4 to 12.2. So that's very high. Her body was just like a sponge, you know, it just absorbed those fatty acids. And we can say all her figures are perfect. Your protection, the top one, which I haven't told you about yet, this is actually the full conclusion on the full fatty acid profile. Fatty acid profile means the dispersal of the different fatty acids in the body. How big percentage do they each take up of your total fatty acids? When you have a full protection, it means that the dispersal is perfect in order to protect you against lifestyle diseases. So this is something we want to achieve. That's your protection. So let's see what happened with her figures. So we can see that the arachidonic acid moved up to 8.1. So she's really has improved there. Her omega-3s are perfect. She's a little on the high side. This doesn't have any effect at all. This is just very positive. She has a low level of inflammation. She even actually, in this period, she had trouble with some inflammation in her cheekbone for 8 years. This disappeared in this period. So that was also very positive for her. And we can also see at the top the palmitic acid, which was very high on her first test. Now cutting down on the carbs really affect that. So she's actually back on track. So this had immense influence on her health, that she did these smaller changes to her diet, just tweaking here and there, taking the oil, and it really changed everything. Okay, so the last one I want to show you is, this is actually a man, and probably some of the worst figures I've seen. So his omega-3 level is down to 0.5. He has a balance of 33.21, really, really poor. He has no arachidonic acid formation efficiency. His cell membranes, I mean, he is just stiff and hard. And if we look at the numbers, we can see the top one, too much carbohydrate in the food. The oleic acid, the yellow circle, is so high because, well, this fatty acid, the omega-9, it comes from either olive oil or avocado, but also the body is capable of producing it itself. And when nothing else is really available, the body tends to produce, it just has to put something into the cell membranes, even though the functioning of this omega-9 is not the same as the 6 or 3, but it has to put something in there. The linoleic acid, just below the oleic acid, is down to 18.6, so he doesn't actually get enough linoleic acid. And I need to also tell you that the linoleic acid, it comes from the plant oils that I talked about, but it's also present in something like seeds, grains, almonds, nuts, and a lot of linoleic acid in many different things from the plant world. So it's not only those oils. We go down to the arachidonic acid. He's really, really low here, only 3%. And then again, his EPA and DHA, he's just so depleted. So for this guy, I told him, and now maybe it doesn't come to a surprise for you, but he was actually vegan. So I told him, you need to add some more animal food into your diet, and you need to cut on the carbs, more animal food. Your body is so depleted. And I'm going to test him very soon again. And I look so much forward because I know that he has worked on this. It's difficult because he's been used to plant food, but obviously this plant food didn't give him what his body's needs. So not saying that a vegan diet can't be healthy, but I really see a tendency that a lot of vegans that I've tested, they have so low omega-3 levels and they even lack omega-6. So this was it. I think we're just over time, Rob. I'm sorry about that. 3 minutes, that's my watch. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Yes.
Fantastic, Thilde. And again, thank you so much for that great information. I just want to ask about when you said lifestyle diseases, okay, are we
Yeah.
talking about like the global meltdown that we've got now? Is that what you call a lifestyle disease, or is that just a pandemic issue that we've got happening globally?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about lifestyle diseases, I would say we also call them Western diseases, actually, because it seems like in the Western countries, we have had those problems for a long period of time. Now they're actually also starting in the East, so they're not protected anymore because they eat the same food as we do. And lifestyle disease like heart disease is probably the biggest killer. Then we have cancer. We have a lot of the autoimmune diseases like gout, Alzheimer's, sclerosis, many of these diseases that are actually originating in an immune system that is too active. And it's too active because it's inflamed all the time. And that is what we are working on with our omega-3, is turning down the activation of the immune system. So it doesn't get, I would say, a little too aggressive on places in the body where they're not supposed to work. So our immune system is not supposed to attack our joints like it does in gout. And that's something that we are working on when we add more omega-3 to the diet.
So when we look at, for an example, the pandemic that we've got around the world at the moment, I know that people are saying, well, we're losing 140,000 people. I believe it's a day. There was a presentation, I think, in Denmark the other day or somewhere in Europe, where they showed a slide of what was happening with the coronavirus versus heart disease or heart attacks on a daily basis. And it was like ridiculous. Here's 1,000 people versus 140,000. So even though we see it as a massive issue, what we're talking about is what our products can do for those people with lifestyle diseases is what we should be worried about more than what we're worried about at the moment with the global pandemic that we've got. But, you know, it's all about building the immune system, correct?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say building, I would more say making it relax more, because it seems to always be on fire when there's too much omega-6 in the body. It's like it's struggling to actually, it believes that there's an invader, there's intruders like bacteria or virus in the body all the time. And when that is a normal condition for a human body, the immune system never gets time to relax and actually recover as an immune system needs to do. So it's always activated, and that means that it can be quite creative in attacking the body itself. And that can also be the inside of the blood vessels. So that's what creates heart disease, is that the immune system attacks the inside of the blood vessels because it believes that there's a bacteria there, but there's not. It's just food derived. And that is why the omega-3 is so important, because omega-3 stops that inflammation. So it tells the immune system, nothing to worry about. There's no invasion here, just relax. So that's how I would put it in terms of a picture.
Fantastic. All right, Thilde, thank you so much for coming on again today. We have about another 6 weeks of this, what I call Wellness Professionals. I would love to get you back in about 6 weeks' time, okay? And I want to see the results of this vegan gentleman, okay? Because we're finding this, I was waiting for him, because we're finding the Indian population, okay, and I've just been to Malaysia, and we know that some of them have got the same type of diets as the Indian population that we're now bringing on. India as a country for Zinzino. And, you know, I know when we go to Thailand, for an example, we go to Hong Kong, China, we start moving into these Asian countries, Taiwan, Singapore, you know, we're going to see a lot of different results to what we've seen with the European and even just with the Australians in the last 6 months of being, you know, available in Australia. But guys, thank you again very much, Thilde, for your information tonight. It was impeccable information, and we look forward to you know, hearing from you in about 6 or 8 weeks' time, because I'd love to see that result come up and get you just to go that one deeper, you know, explaining those, you know, the meanings. The way you explain it is just impeccable. And everybody on the call and everybody watching the replay, please must make sure you show your appreciation and your love to Thilde. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you all for listening.
Okay, take care.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Thilde.